Welcome to Joidala Fashion Guide. Today's video, you're going to be making a flare palazzo or an A-line palazzo, or you want to call it a skirt palazzo. So my fabric is already folded into two, and I have a total length of 24 inches, and then for this side I have 6 inches to create the flare. So depending on how flare you want it to be, that is how, and how much fabric that you have, that is how you fold your fabric. So on this side, I'm marking the 6 inches all the way down. That will create the side flare. Okay, and then on the down part, I am leaving 2 inches of folding allowance at the down part. So this is the folding allowance. So from this down part, I will not take the full length of the palazzo pant. I'll measure my full length. And for this palazzo, I'm going to be using a 2 inches band. So I'll subtract the band measurement from the full length that I've already measured. And then I'll add ½ inch seam allowance, because I'm going to be joining this palazzo to the band. So I'm just marking the waistline after adding the ½ inch seam allowance. So I'm going to cut this off. So for this side, if you like, you can fold it in so that you don't get confused with your measurements. So let's cut. So this part that I'm cutting, I'm going to be using it as part of the waistband. So now we are ready to start our markings. So we are going to mark the waist to the hip, waist to the crouch, and then waist to the thigh. So you're marking your waist to the hip. Take note of the 2 inch band intake or the band measurement, and then you mark the waist to the hip. So for this, you can use depending on your own measurement, can be 8 or 9 inches. So I'm working with 8 inches, and then 3 inches from that will give you your crotch line, and then 3 inches down from the crotch line will give you the thigh line. So 3 inches from there will give us the crotch line, and then 3 inches from there will give us the thigh line. So I'm just repeating all the measurements again: waist to hip, waist to crouch, and then waist to the hip. After that, I'm going to connect with a straight ruler, with a straight line. So this is my hip line. This is the crouch line. For some persons, it is 2 inches below the hip line. So those are working with a hip of 9, your crouch may be 11, which is 2 inches below. So depending on the body measurements. And then that is the thigh line. So I'll just go ahead and label my patterns. This is the waist line. This is the hip line. This is the crouch line, and then this is the thigh line. So on the hip line, I'm going to be imputing quarter of my hip measurement, quarter of the hip measurement, and then you can add ease allowance of ½ inch or 1 inch, depending on how free you want it to be on your body. So the quarter of the hip measurement, you also repeat it on the waistline. Repeat it on the waistline, and then we are going to connect that with a long ruler. So you can connect it all the way to the crash line. So the next thing on the crash line is to mark a 1-inch diagonal line so that we can get the front curve. Just mark 1 inch so that we can get our curve. So you can connect that with your ruler or your French curve. And then I'm going to be adding ½ inch. I'm going to be adding 1/4 of an inch to the hip line so that I can curve the line very well. So from that line, I'll come out by 1/4 of an inch so that I can get the curve very well. I connect it to the down part like this. So on the next thing now is to impute. Just measure what you have there on the hip line, divide it by 4 so that we can get our crouch extension. If you don't want to use this method, you can also use half of the thigh measurement to get the crouch extension. So I'm going to also add ½ inch for seam. So I'll just add the same ½ inch all the way from the waistline down to the curve. I'm just adding ½ inch seam allowance. So this is the seam allowance for the front crash length. So the next thing now is to impute our waist measurement. So I will start from the center back, from the center front to the side. So mark 1/4 of the waist measurement. 1/4 of the waist measurement. And then if you intend to add a dart, you add 1 inch. 1 inch dart intake. And then you can add the seam allowance to the side as well, or you add all your seam allowance to the back pattern. But this I'm going to be adding 3/4 of an inch to the side seam, and then I'll connect that to the hip line. I just use my ruler to connect it to the hip. So it's better for you to use a hip curve. The French curve will not give you what you really want. It will not curve the hip very well. So if you have a French curve, it's better for you to use a French curve, or just use your straight ruler and use your hand to blend it into the hip line. So we go over to the thigh line. So on the thigh line, we are going to impute half of the thigh measurement. Half of the thigh measurement. You remember, it's a palazzo, it's not a tight fitting trouser, so you will not be using your exact thigh measurement. You'll be adding extra inches to it. So for this, I'm using 16 inches. So just measure what you have then and check the midpoint. Now, for a flare palazzo, we do not really need this crease line or center line. But if it is a straight palazzo you are making, then you need to make use of this center line that I am marking right now, so that we can keep our palazzo straight. So this is necessary when you are creating a straight palazzo. So you mark half of the thigh measurement at the down part. Okay, especially when you do not want the down part to be too wide. So as the thigh is 16, assuming you want to reduce the down part to 14, then this middle line I'm drawing is very, very important. So if, for example, you are reducing the down part to 14, from the middle, that is 7 on this side, 7 on the other side. And then you now connect it to the crouch, and then the other side to the hip line. So that way your palazzo will be straight. So for a straight palazzo, another way is to just connect from the crouch. After marking the crouch length, you just take it from there straight down to the down part. This is if you want the down part to be the same wideness as the thigh. So if you want the same wideness as the thigh, then you take it straight down. If not, that is when the mark I have made at the middle becomes important, and then you allocate what you want on the left and on the right side. But for this tutorial, I am making a flare palazzo. So at the side, after the crouch, you see that I have some extra inches extended out. So I am going to slant my hand from the crouch to the end of the fabric. So I will slant it so that that part can flare out. So I'll just slant it the way you see me do from the crouch. I'll just slant it to the end of the fabric. So that this is why it is A line. It's almost like half circle as well. So once I'm through with that part, you see, you just measure what you have. I'm just confirming what I have. So you see the extra that I have there. So I go to the other side that I folded in, and I'm also going to slant that to create the A line or the A shape. So for this part, I'll be connecting from the hip. I'll connect it from the hip. I'll slant it to the end. So if you like, you can also connect it from the waistline, but I'm connecting from the hip line. So from the hip line, I just use my ruler. I'll mark a slanted line to the corner of the down part so that I can have the A shape. So this is a flare palazzo or skirt palazzo or A-line palazzo, because it's almost like a skirt. So you just go ahead and connect it like this. So when you are through connecting it, we are going to curve the down part. So after connecting both sides, we are going to curve the down part. We will not just leave it straight like that. So you can go up by 2 inches on both sides. 2 inches on both sides. And then curve it towards the middle, towards that center line that we drawn earlier. We curve it towards that line. So for this, you can use your French curve. You can use your French curve. Just connect that. So for this center front, we are going to be coming down with 1 inch. because the waist is not straight. This will help our palazzo to sit well on our waistline. So I'm coming down with 1 inch and then slant it to the side. So I will cut it off after drafting the back pattern. So go ahead and cut out the pattern. So if today is your first time coming across this channel, once again you are welcome. Please kindly click on the subscribe button so that you always receive notification each time I make a new video. Also, don't forget to like, share, and please comment in the comment section below after watching. This is Joidala fashion guide. So this part that I've cut off, we can use it to create our pockets. So you just set that aside. So don't forget to also trim the down parts. So this brings us to the end of the front pattern. So for the back pattern, you're going to place another fabric on fold. Okay, making sure that it's more than the front one that we folded earlier. The front one was a total of 24 inches. So this can be 27 inches. And then we place the front pattern on it. We are not going to be extending the side anymore. We'll only extend the crouch side. We'll only be adding our allowances to the crouch side. So I'm going to be adding 3 inches to the crouch. So you can use the same crouch extension that you used before for the front pattern. So for this part, we'll just extend it out by 1 inch. Remember, we've already added our seam allowance to the crouch, the front crouch. So I'm just going to add just 1 inch. And then I'm going to connect that to create the crouch curve. So just connect that to create the crouch curve. So for the side, if you like, you can maintain the wideness of the front part. So before then, we are going to create allowance for the bum bum. So we are going up by 2 inches. And then we slant it to the side. So this will create room for our butt. So if you are working with a client that has a bigger butt, then you should consider using 3 inches. But I'm marking 2 inches. Remember, we already have a 1 inch slant for the front. So this actually makes 3 inches. So if you are working with a bigger one, then you could make yours 2.5. So just measure what you have for the front waistline and then cross check it to the back waistline. Mark it on the back waistline. Remember, we have already taken our waist measurements. We've already added seam allowance. Okay. So I'm just going to, I will still add seam allowance just in case I need to make some adjustments. Then I just blend that into the hip line. But if you are very sure of your seam, then at this point you don't need to add any extra seam allowance again. So I'll just blend it into the hip line and then I connect it straight down. I'll take it straight down to the hem. Take it straight down to the hem. And then for the other side, I can maintain the same uh, width of the front. But I'm going to be adding extra 2. This is the same allowance. But mind you, this will make your flare to come out more. So if you don't want your palazzo to be too flare at this point, then you just connect the crash and blend it into the side of the front pattern. But for this, I'm adding 2 inches also to the down parts and connecting. So this is just me adding 2 inches to the middle part as well so that I can have a straight line. So these 2 inches will help me to maintain the width that I already have in mind. If not, it will reduce your original measurement by 2 because you will need seam allowance to join the front and the back pattern. So just measure the length of the front from the crash downward and also compare it to the back pattern so that I'll know if I need to make any adjustments around the crash. But for this, they are both the same. So the next thing is to create the curve at the down parts. So I'm just confirming the length that is same as the front pattern. So I'm going to be cutting out the back pattern. So to help me cut that part out, just shifted the front pattern forward and then just trace it out. Then it also curve the down part as well. So once I'm through, I can take it, adjust it back to the side and then cut out the side, or just follow the chalk mark that I already have there. So there's me cutting out the pattern. You just follow the chalk mark and then cut it out. Then cut the waistline. So don't forget to also trim off the 1-inch slant on the waistline. So this is the back pattern. So to add the dart from the center from the center back, you go in with half of the bust span measurement. Remember, we already have 1/2 inch seam allowance, so instead of marking 4 inches, I'm going to be marking 4.5. And then for the length of the dart, I'll take note of the 2-inch band and then mark my dart length to stop around 6 inches. So making my length of the dart to be around 4 inches. So I'm making it 4.5. So go ahead and notch it so that it can appear on both sides. Then we mark 1/2 inch. So I'm just confirming the length, 4 inches length. So because of seam, I mark at 4.5. So I'm just marking on the other side, on the opposite side, so that it will be easy when I'm sewing. And don't forget to mark 1/2 inch on both sides. So that is all for the back pattern. Then for the front pattern, the 1 inch slant, remember to cut it out or to cut it off. And then to add the dart, we also mark it from the center front. I'm marking half of the bust span measurement plus 1/2 inch seam allowance, because I have half inch seam allowance around the crotch. So instead of 4, I'm marking 4.5, and then I'm marking the dart length. So also go ahead and notch it so that it can appear on both fabric. Now we have the left and the right front, and then I'm just marking the dart again on the other side of the fabric so that it will be easy for me when I am stitching. So don't forget, at the waistline, you're going to mark 1/2 inch on both sides of the dart line, and then use your ruler to connect it like a triangle. So next is the pocket. We are going to be adding pockets to our palazzo pants. So you want to stop before the hip line. You can also use the hip line as a guide and just notch it. So after that, you get the fabric they're going to use for the pocket bag. Then for the width of the pocket, you can stop around the dart. So I'm going in by 2 inches. The part I'm going to be cutting out from the waist, side waist, I'm going in by 2 inches. And then I connect that to the length that I already marked. So length can be 7 inches or 6.5. Or you stop on your hip line. So I'm going to be using this piece for the pocket bag. So I'm just cutting off the excess fabric there. So I'm going to fold it into 2 like this, and then mark and trim off the excess. So for the depth of the pocket, it can be 11 or 12 inches. So we'll use this to cut out a second one. So to add it to the pockets, to the front paneling, so this is me cutting the other side, mark 2 inches inside, connect it to the 7 inches by the side. We are going to be cutting that part off. Okay, before we do that, we'll just place it on the pocket bag. So remember, this pocket bag is going to be 2. So you place it on it like this, and then we are going to trim. Remember, it's on fold. So when you are cutting, don't cut both of them. Only cut the upper one. So don't cut the down one. So just cut it the way you see me do. So I'm just trimming the side of the pocket to make sure we have the shape of the front panel. And then I'm now cutting off the excess pockets. So this is the opening of the pocket. So we'll be using this on this. So we'll use this to cut out another one for the other side. So once you have your pocket like this, you're going to place it right side facing each other, and then you're going to stitch with 1/4 of an inch. After that, you notch the curve area. After notching, we are going to flip it inside and under stitch. Flip it inside and then we under stitch. So that is how we are going to sew the pocket. We'll also repeat same for the other side. So after that, you are going to, so this is the zipper that I'm going to be using. So you also need to cut out the zip fly and the zip fly protector. So I have a video of how to sew that, so you can check it out. I'll be leaving the link on the description below. So to sew, we'll just join the crouch. So I'll join the crouch line together of the front using a temporary stitch because I'm going to be adding pockets to that later. So I've gone ahead to sew the darts. So I've sewn the dart. So the next thing now is to sew the side of the pants. So I'll place the front on the back and then sew the side. So I'll do same for the other side as well. We are joining the side of the front and the back together and just sew from top to bottom. Then after that, you are going to fold the pant into 2 so that we'll have the back crouch on one side and the front crouch on the other side. And then at this point, you are going to confirm our waist and hip measurements so that we'll know exactly where we are sewing the back crouch extension. So on the waistline, I'm going to impute half of the waist measurement because now our pant is folded into 2. So half of the waist measurement. This time around, we are not adding any seam again. We are now using the exact measurement. So whatever is left, we'll mark it. And then if you have any excess fabric there, just take the seam allowance that you require and then blend it into the crouch length and cut off the excess. So just trim off the excess. So once you are through like this, next thing is to measure the waist to the hip line. We are through with the waistline. Now I want to check the hip line to make sure that we have the hip measurements. So half of the hip measurements, then you mark it. Half of the hip measurements, mark it on the hip line. So I have ½ inch left for seam to join the crouch. So just connect that from the waistline to that hip line and then to the hip, to the crouch curve. So you can use your ruler to connect all that together. So you stitch along this line. So after you have done that, I'm just going to use pin to hold that in place. So I want to assume that you have finished stitching. So the next thing now is to join the crotch of the palazzo. We are going to be joining the crotch of the front and the back. So make sure that they match, that the seam aligns. And from that middle, you just take it straight down with 1/2 inch seam allowance, or whatever seam allowance that you have left. From that same middle, we take it to the other side with 1/2 inch seam allowance. Then after that, we are going to be folding the down of our palazzo. So you fold it with the same allowance that you have left. I'm using 1 inch. So I'm going to remove this temporary stitch for the front crotch and then fix my zipper. After that, I'll measure around the waistline so that I can cut out the waistbands. So I'll just measure it round like this. And then that piece I cut out initially, I'm going to be cutting another one to turn the up and down. Then I'll iron the gum stay on this one and use that one to turn it, after which I will fix my waistband and we are through. So here is the final look of our A-line palazzo. You can call it a flare palazzo, or circle palazzo, or skirt palazzo. This is Joidala fashion guide. Please don't forget to leave comment below in the comment section, like my video, share my video, and please subscribe. Thanks for watching. I'll see you again in another video. Bye.